Hi, and welcome to Katie's Classroom. Today in Katie's Classroom, we're talking about my personal Plant Prana experience. Plant Prana is a company that sells essential oils. Greg Taus, is the person who I got to have this experience with, as the teacher and healer of Plant Prana. He's the person who also mixes his own oils and sends them out before classes. Not a plug for Plant Prana. None of the stuff I share and my experience is ever intended to be a plug. I do like to share what I've experienced in my journey, just in case it sparks something for you and inspires you. It's not intended to inspire you to go purchase, or it may or may not even be for you. But enough about that. My Plant Prana experience, this is my second time having an experience with them. I will say the quality of inhaling the oil is why I don't really get oils anywhere else. So I will offer that. The plant does talk and it does speak. And so when you're looking at wanting to have a conversation with an essential oil, it does matter how the plant was processed and how it became the oil it became. The first time was just a general essential oils class a few years ago. I didn't know a ton about it. My interest was piqued. I definitely learned a lot about healing. This time I felt called to go to the course. It was called Peace, Protection, Harmony. It mentioned soul retrieval, and it was on Venus. More importantly, it talked about the vagal tone and cardiovascular regulation, which, if you know me here, you know I'm certified as in activating the heart of teams HeartMath trainer, which is the vagal tone and activating the wisdom of the heart. There's a brain that lives there that they finally found in the 90s. And I'm also have 12 credit hours of trauma sensitive training that I'm not allowed to say I'm certified because it is only a certification for medical professionals. I did the exact same training, quiz, test, results, what have you. But I digress. I came with it not really knowing what the experience is going to be, which is my favorite way to enter an experience, unattached. And I also knew that this experience would be about embodiment. We use that word and throw it around a lot, but as well as self awareness. And the problem with self awareness is that, yeah, you can be really aware of self. Are you aware of the body? When I support self awareness as a key to transformation, I support people and going into the body. Do you know where your breathing is in that moment? If you don't, you're not self aware. Because if you are aware of where your breathing is and how shallow it is, or am I holding my breath, or what is actually happening in my body, that's the wisdom that brings the awareness that creates transformation. But from a scientific space, we know that the autonomic nervous system is making 90% of your decisions, arguably, maybe more. We also know that it predicts and the signal takes a minute to get up. So your body has already made a decision before the brain has had a thought that has reached it. So if you're here for the science, you can get that too. But I want to go back to the soul and recognizing that we are living in 2025, but there's a part of your body that's not. There might be a finger living in 1990, that there might be an organ that's still reliving on a loop over and over, a fear that it had or a traumatic experience. And I always like to just say, oh, it was so long ago. Like, I've processed that, I've packaged it, I've put it away. And yeah, they talk about the body keeping score. That's not really what the body's doing. The body's remembering and reliving. It doesn't have a scorecard. I don't think. It's stuck in a loop, this homeostatic emotion that can get stuck there on repeat. And that emotion is what's sending that signal up, which is causing that feeling. And perhaps your intellect might make the pattern afterwards and the connection of, ooh, well, this, it wasn't the way you said it, it was how you said it, and it triggered this. Yeah, it woke up an organ and it sent that signal over. And it doesn't have to be an organ, it can be other places of the body. But point being is time is only linear for the mind. And even that is not true because your mind can remember anything it wants and immediately be there. It can create a fantasy that doesn't exist and also feel like it's there. To borrow my favorite Seinfeld quote from George Costanza, Jerry, it's not a lie if you believe it. If you know that one, he's trying to pass a lie detector test about not watching Melrose Place. Think about that and what a lie detector test is actually measuring. It's not a lie for your body. Energy doesn't lie. So my experience day one was, just so deep in my body. It sounds so trite. If you're listening to this and you're rolling your eyes, I'm rolling along with you because my little logic brain here is going to explode. But the reality is that we don't know how uneasy we are until we are able to step into more ease. And I will borrow upon when my ex-husband had kidney failure. He went through chemo, went through radiation, he had a transplant. He woke up and said, "Oh my gosh, colors are brighter. I didn't realize how sick I was." And then he vomited in a bucket because he had just done chemo. That is how much that we adjust. We don't realize that we're not even settled in the body. But energy doesn't lie. So I wore my HeartMath monitor, which is measuring HRV, which is coherence between the head and the heart. It also measures your BPM, my resting blood pressure, beats per minute. That's what it is. That's right. And there was a shift from that energetic perspective. I had, well, we were in class from 10 a.m. until 7 p.m. And yes, there was a lunch break in there and a few other, 15-minute breaks, but the coherence level I maintained all day was very high. I did feel incredibly settled. And the more settled that the emotions and the body and the mind are, the more you can change how you interact with the environment, which is why I bring so much of the breathing exercises into leadership and corporate training. You would just have a bunch of nervous systems in a meeting. You have a bunch of energy systems that are coming to a meeting. And all of those energies they're putting out a signal. And there may be hidden agendas in that intellect that don't match the energy. The energy may be excited, but it's not real because that's not how they really feel. I like this quote he shared: ability to perceive, to move through a situation is directly tied to the activation of the heart. I probably got that exactly as he said as I was writing it, but just loosely quoted. The more regulated, the more we move towards light versus the intellect. And the intellect is incredibly dramatic. It writes stories and it produces these dramas. If you don't think the intellect is not dramatic, would like to introduce you to your mind. The intellect needs to be balanced with light. And this is a concept that might be a little challenging, so bear with me here. The intellect is about repetition. It's about maintaining something. And that repetition and intellect can disconnect the body from the mind. And because of that, the intellect, it avoids. My favorite part about the intellect, about logic, is that it is a loop. Logic will talk itself out and into its same thing over and over. Logic will eventually find itself right back to the very beginning. Intellect doesn't try to grow. You may say, that's not right, Katie. Like, I want to get better every day. But are you doing it with a book still, or a course, or a certification? Because that's not growth. That's just repetitive. And then we have this lovely piece that Einstein tells us, which is that the imagination is far more valuable than knowledge. Energy is simply just an ability to produce a result. So 5 energies walk into a room, all with an ability to produce a result. Why don't they produce a result at the end of that meeting? I've read all the leadership books. I can tell you what all the intellect says. But I would offer there's some lies happening within that. There's not honesty. The energy is not it's not aligned, as they say, right? And when your energy and body, the emotion and the intellect are settled, your ability to perceive a good choice or a bad choice, if we're to classify it, I prefer to feel like a more harmonic choice, a less harmonic choice. Well, it's easier, it's lighter. We talk about light being the only thing that can drive out darkness. And yet, logic says that the only way to solve our problems is through debate. So, are we cultivating light and stability and providence, or are we cultivating more disconnect, more intellect, and continuing to get more of the same and wondering why things never change? Dysregulation, fight, flight, we all know about that. I think we've all known about that now. There are parts of your body that are still in fight or flight right now as we speak that you are not aware of. How does your liver feel? Have you sat there and talked with it? What about your gallbladder? About an intestine? I know you're thinking, Katie, this is nuts. No one talks to these organs. And yet, we know if we put you in a very silent room, they talk about those, we can hear your blood moving through your body. Yeah, it's still happening right now. This is how I like to explain energy to people that are still a little confused about how it works. Right now, there's 100 radio stations going on. You can't hear any of them because we haven't tuned in. So where's your energy tuned in? Where is it on that staticky station, on the trying to find its way to manifest the station it wants ultimately, right? That's what we're talking about in this is, and the Venus stuff we talked about was incredible. And Venus is where values live. If you're going to look at a human design chart, you get two of them. If you're going to look at your gene keys system, Venus is where your cycle from 0 to 7 unconsciously is impacted. And then Venus consciously is impacted during your cycle 15 to 21. The IQ and the SQ. SQ is that little spirit, that the innocent child. Completely makes sense. That's what we're talking about when we say light. Go watch a 3-year-old play, and that's what lightness looks like. So much light is in. So much light gets into a child that they can punch their brother and get a bloody lip and cuddle and snuggle on the couch that evening and watch TV. That's a lot of light. Could you imagine if either one of those toddlers woke up the next day still mad about it? That's just what adults do. That's what intellect looks like. Bringing light to an area that is stuck in a repetitive mode was ultimately what we were doing. And the vagal tone talked about where this is really where we produce these emotions, and then we can improve these deeper aspects of Venus. The vagal tone wakes up this deeper consciousness. And science is all aligned here. If you don't know that you have two nervous systems, perhaps you do, but what you might not know is that the brain only connects to the CNS, the central nervous system. It has to get its information from the autonomic nervous system, from the CNS. Those two have to talk before the brain gets signals. And so there's a lot going on. And yet the world continues to be obsessed with the brain. Heck, even ADHD diagnoses. They always talk about that darn brain as if it's not a nervous system regulation issue. Great research coming out now from an independent woman who Princeton stole her research, and now they're running with it. You can follow on comorbidities. Essentially, autism is freezing a nervous system like it's on fire, is what the research is showing, which is fascinating to consider where you are on fire internally inside. So as I said, day one felt really grounded, felt really in my body, very aware. And then we got to day two. And I always say that third time is a charm for me. So third time Venus kicked my ass. And so as we started to do the breathing in of this particular oil, there was resistance. Like my body, we breathed the soil the day before. My body didn't want that to breathe that in. I could feel the resistance in my belly as I was focusing on the Meng Meng, the small space, the back of the navel on your body, the Meng Men. I think that's how I said it. And so I shared. Before that happened, we were invited to just sort of observe a past situation that perhaps was a tough time, or and when I shared, I was kind of, what's the word I want? Well timed, to have, I don't want to say validating recognition. Maybe there was a part of my body that needed to be validated and recognized. I don't know. But he used the word trauma. And so that was a lot of trauma that you experienced. And what I shared was when my ex-husband had the kidney and chemo, and then there was business partners, and one murdered the other, after I left. But I went to college with both of them. I played tennis with her. She took 20% of the company from me, like stole it, and I had to buy her out. There was some trauma. It was so long ago, though, 15 years. It doesn't feel like something I should still be experiencing. And yet, as synchronicities go, the day that I signed up for the class, that evening, I go on LinkedIn, as one does, trying to build a business. I'm not trying, continuing to build our business. And I saw my ex-husband on the cover of our alumni magazine, and I knew immediately that he was on chemo again. You don't forget that. So I suppose in that way, he's right. It was traumatic. And he mentioned like a lot of things were just blamed on you, and um, he nailed it. He wasn't there, but he was right. And so we talked about the ANS, the autonomic nervous system, and how it holds things in the limbs. And so that's where we shifted the focus for me. And it helped. It did. And then he offered up a couple organ systems to follow: the lungs, the liver, the kidney, the gallbladder. And there's another one I don't have it in front of me. And that is where I really felt more settled. And then we stepped into the next exercise. And that is where, before I got to the next exercise, I realized the smell of the dialysis center. I can't describe it unless you know what it is. It was on the labels of these oils, and it was the container, just like a plastic pencil case. And I was like, oh, the off gassing from this, it smells like I got to get rid of this. And so I ripped the label off, and then I had this beautiful release where we just had to focus on the solar plexus, and all of a sudden just some tears came out, and it was just very beautiful. If you haven't had a really embodied experience where your body speaks to you and you know it's speaking to you, it's worth the price of admission. And the craziest thing, I wouldn't believe me if this didn't happen. I saw, I shared with him, and he did mention he did a cord cutting for me when I was doing the breathing. And I even shared that the smell, I had to rip the labels off, but then I had this beautiful release. I felt pretty great after that weekend. And yesterday, I had done some of the breathing exercises again, and I didn't really smell that smell that was just ingrained in me that I mentioned. And I'm like, that's weird. And then I went to the pencil case that I had set in the kitchen because I didn't want it to be anywhere near where I was sitting. And I just put it up to my nose, and it just smelled like a damn pencil case. And it really blew my mind. I don't have a scientific answer for that one, for my scientific folks. All I know is that that smell is pungent. And I know when I step into a nursing home, or I just remember that smell, and it was gone. I don't know. I don't have a way to explain it other than it smelled like plastic, but it wasn't that smell. And if I hadn't experienced it myself, I wouldn't believe it. So feeling is believing. seeing is not really a great way to believe because your eyes only perceive so much frequency. Heck, there's insects, dogs, and birds that see more than you see as a human. So I would not use seeing as believing as a way to measure things logically or scientifically, even though we do. And so I thought I'd end today with sharing a little bit about what I learned from what Venus at 12 degrees 9, I don't know, something Venus and Saturn opposing Venus and Taurus. That's what it says about my astrology. I only know it from a gene keys and human design perspective. And so I'm going to share a little bit about what it says. And I looked it up after I did the course. I always like to do that. People talk about, well, confirmation bias. I'm like, okay, but that was still a thing before I read it and had that experience. I could have had any experience in that thing and then read something that was already written about this, but I digress. The past, inadequacy, unable to ask for what you want because you don't feel you deserve it. You project inadequacy on a goal and belief, and you'll be free if you look a certain way or if you make X amount of money. Of course, the inadequacy is still there. This is calling you to break through and love yourself unconditionally. Self-worth doesn't rely on outside validation. Probably why I didn't want to use that word earlier. Finding balance around the things you enjoy. If something doesn't feel good, avoid it. Only do things you enjoy versus impress people or try to prove something. When I take that in conjunction with the 6124 that I have in my Gene Keys human design chart, the 6124 is a head channel. I'm very much in my head. So to be drawn to this course at this auspicious time of having the literally that night, feeling this trigger and then being able to release that. You truly do not have awareness of how unsettled you are until you feel more settled. So I do have offerings to help you feel more settled. And great news, my podcast has great meditations that are not anything cost to you. They're free. You can check them out. HeartMath has some great things you can download as well to experience that vagal tone. And the only thing I would offer that I think HeartMath misses is I bring in belly breathing so that we're really hitting that area. I like to hum because it also stimulates the vagus nerve, which supports vagal tone. As you've been listening to this, if you've been feeling any resistance, it's a good place to get curious about where there might be some dysregulation that exists because homeostasis says we want to stay the same. And so we're going to make this feel uncomfortable so that way we stay in the comfort zone, right? Isn't that what all the leadership books talk about? When we regulate the mind, we can observe life versus judge. I really loved the way he also described intellect. I know I said I was going to end, but I got a few more little nuggets for you. The intellect wants to maintain repetition. It's like he called it like a child that plays with dolls. You know, you line up your dolls and you want to play them a certain way. You don't want to make any adjustments. If you've ever walked into a toddler playing dolls and decided that you wanted this doll to say something and they didn't want you to say that, that's the intellect. The intellect approaches things from what it wants or needs rather than what is actually happening. And if we were focusing on what was actually happening, we could make adjustments. But adjustments can irritate the intellect. Ultimately, what I do in executive coaching is to help people get more curious and stay regulated. And they always come back and tell me about how they got exactly what needed to happen as a result of doing it. It's not about compromise, it's about competence. Competence does not compromise, but competence is flexible. So often we're not willing to go inward, right? We go to the head doctor, the psychiatrist, to solve a problem the mind created as if somehow that was going to work. We're an interconnected system too, which always cracks me up. You know, like, oh, this hurts. Let me go to this person versus, hey, the whole system is involved here. Why the heck do you think they have side effects? They should call them system effects. Side effects make it sound like it's this, an aside of the drug without, no, 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 no. This affects your systems. There are system effects as a result. Some of you don't have system effects from this. Reality is you probably do and you don't feel them. And so they don't manifest in quite the same way. It's not about letting go of the intellect so much as it's about bringing it back into union with the light, the yin and the yang, the essence and the form, repetition and spontaneity. Which really, this kind of validates my favorite saying about myself, which is that I'm consistently consistent with a shower of inconsistencies. Maybe I'd like to be more of a shower of inconsistencies, or maybe I'd like to be more inconsistently consistent with a shower of consistencies. I don't know. Either way, when we are at odds with ourselves, when our internal energy does not match our outer action or words, we always know the intellect is around. Energy doesn't lie. Humans do. And conflict is tied to the creative process. Other takeaways from this plant prana experience. Ooh, this is one I'd also like to share with you. When we are feeling overwhelmed, there are parts of your body that have learned to freeze better over time. When we're feeling abandoned, there's parts of your body that's learned to fawn better over time. When we're angry, there's parts of your body that has learned to fight better. And when we're fear, part of the body has learned to run better. This felt like a really big epiphany for me as you recognize, like, well, what does that mean? You're overwhelmed, so you freeze better. I know that when I was feeling overwhelmed, I like to play video games on my phone. Ooh. And then we learn the ANS in the hands, and that's where we store some of this homeostatic emotion. It's a freeze. Instead of going to the computer and using my hands to do something, I'm frozen in this video game, just wishing I knew what to do next. That really tracked for me. Same thing for the fawn when you feel abandoned, or the anger. It's funny, I was ready to like write a blog and do a post on Monday and for whatever day it was, and I went out and saw a tree that had been over trimmed, and I got angry because I loved that tree. And then I went and told my husband, and he got angry. And then I went and I knocked out a ton of work, and I was like, oh man, am I really just learning how to fight better? Because I was in overwhelm or abandoned before, or fear, running away from work. It was just a kind of an epiphany of recognizing, like, which of these do you find yourself in a pattern around when certain things happen? Just to bring more awareness. But you also have to feel and release. The body is really that wisdom holder for you. The body still thinks it's happening. The body is still trying to get you to take some type of action. You can't out intellect the intelligence of the body. I don't know that the body can out intelligence the wit of the intellect. I have questions. But you can bring them together and have them play together. And so those are kind of my learnings from my plant prana experience. And whether or not you have one on your own, I don't really care. Just wanted to share a little bit about what I had learned and experienced in hopes that it might spark something for you. And a reminder that your intellect can't solve whatever it's currently trying to